Well, g'day everyone. It's the Two Ordinary Cops, and we're back now, mate. I'm going to hand over straight to Damo. Basically, I heard you've had man flu.
Oh, have I what? Oh, absolutely floored, Schultzy. No, I spent nearly 3 days in bed over the weekend, which is just ridiculous for me. I haven't been this sick in a long time. Just crook as a dog. But I was very, very proud of my wife. She came out with a term after about day 2 of me just being a whinging goose and just slopping all over the place and, just being a head full of snot kind of clown. She came out with an excellent word that I hadn't used for a long time, and it's an Aboriginal word from the Port Keats area, I believe, and the word's mundry, and mundry is spelled Mundjerri for those playing along at home.
Yeah.
And the reason I want to introduce it to the Australian people is because it's a spectacular term. It basically just means you're just whingy. You're just whinging about everything. So if someone's full mundry for that fella, he's no good. Him full mundry. That means he's just whinging all the time about stuff. He's not happy. He's just an absolute depressing pile of pus. And that's what I've been for the last 4 days. So my wife came out and she goes, "Oh, you're just full mundry." And I had to laugh. It was just, she's like, "Yep, I bloody well am full mundry." So, yeah, that's the new word. I want to hear it around the streets of Sydney. Mundry. Yeah.
Mate, even over in New Zealand, we want to hear it.
Bloody oath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mundry Hebrew.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
Oh
Ah,
dear.
very good, mate. Hey, so,
Yes.
mate, we've sort of had a bit of a chat. We're talking about, we've always spoken about funny things, and we've always mentioned the police club and how that was good to bond everyone together. And we've had a few people ask us, and we sort of thought of it as well. But we thought we'd talk about camaraderie within the police force
Yep.
and why it's important. And we'll back and forth it and all the rest of it. But I think for any role where you're carrying out a job that's got tension to it, so I always refer back to the military because it's very similar to there. Like within the military, there's obviously esprit de corps, camaraderie. You need to be part of a team, and you need to feel part of that team. And this is relevant to everything. It's relevant to business, small business, big business. Bloody hell, every government department you can imagine where you work with other people, you kind of, if there's camaraderie amongst the crew, it's a better place to work, and everyone performs better. So I think it was good that I think someone, I can't remember, did we come up with it or did someone suggest it?
I think it was part of it. Like people have spoken about it, but it was definitely it was. I thought about it the other day. I was watching a police show, and it was all about how they're helping out their mates and supporting them through tough times and all that sort of
Yeah,
thing. And I just I thought that would be a really good thing to talk about because we haven't we've touched on it a little bit, but haven't
yeah.
really discussed it. Like deep on because it's got for me like that what was one thing I loved about the police force. It was,
Oh, yeah.
you're always you're backing up your mate, and you build some really strong, like strong that ironclad relationships that will never break.
Yeah. And look, I think we can also talk about something a little bit controversial with this that I've only just sort of thought of. But the camaraderie in the police force, especially, is essential because you're operating in the same streets that other people operate in with no tension at all. And you'll be driving past going, bloody hell, that's where we had that mad fight with this fella and had to handcuff him. Or, wow, that's where we scooped that dead body off the road right there. And
Yep.
everyone else in the car's going, what? So um, the camaraderie is essential, but another thing that police often get criticised for is slamming shut the doors on potential police corruption
Yep.
and not calling out people for doing things. And I think there's a line there that has to be tread, and I think we can probably talk about that a bit as well.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, mate. Like, do you want to kick it off? Like, talk about those early days. I think we're going to talk about the college and how we started off. With the camaraderie there.
Yeah, mate. It was all about building a mateship, and I know when I think back, I can think about it was one of our big barbecues. We had on one of the first weekends, and the sergeants, got us in and all that sort of thing. And it was a team building exercise, and we did a few of them through the college. But that's how, like everybody in our college, or everybody that went through the college with us, we are really strongly bonded to. Because you go through so much turmoil together. You're all kind of experiencing stuff for the first time, and you work through it together. And I think it's important to learn how to work as a team. And any good police force, it doesn't matter which section you're in, whether it's traffic. Well, don't worry about traffic.
Nah,
Um,
forget traffic.
whether it's crime, or whether it's chasing youth crime or juvenile justice, or even working in prosecutions. It's so important to have that mateship and that work, that teamwork, because that just really, it makes you far more efficient. And I think that's one thing I loved about, definitely, when we joined the police force. So what are your thoughts there?
Mate, yeah, so I remember mate, I can vividly remember day one. And I think the reason I remember it is because the way you spell my surname is BA, and we were all listed in alphabetical order. So I was
Yep.
number one on the list. I was the first duty student, day one.
That's right.
And I remember we put together, they said, you need to develop a social club and you'll pay into it and it'll, pay for your drinks at the end of it. Well, I didn't know how to run a bloody social club. But I remember from the end of day one, we had already had a shared experience. There was already, oh, g'day, mate, how you going? And there was already that we've got things in common. These are people who, we've got shared pasts. We're all from different walks of life, but we're sort of similar in ways that we felt the way that we wanted to feel, and we wanted to join this job, and we were all keen, and everyone was positive. So I think what happens is you go through these shared experiences, and what happens there is that because you're in those shared experiences, and when you're in the college, you haven't experienced the road yet. So you're a civilian going into a world where all of a sudden people, and they didn't scream and yell. It's not like the army to that point, but they did a bit. But we were going through hard things. We were doing hard PT. We were doing hard, long lessons in law and funny things that happen. And the other thing that used to happen a lot, and it doesn't happen much anymore, is they deliberately used to swear a lot. And that was called environmental inoculation. Like they said, you need to understand you're about to operate in an environment where you're going to hear filthy language every single day of your life, and it just needs to brush over you like nothing. And that's what they did. I think it just meant they swore a lot and they didn't want to get in trouble for it. But
Yeah.
it was environmental inoculation. They said you just need to hear swear words and not even worry about it. But then you've
Yep.
also got to be able to filter it coming out.
Yeah.
So um, I remember we bonded early on, and all of us. I think you're right. That barbecue, we had a barbecue pretty early on, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks in,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
right.
remember that going, "Yeah, this is a good team. I like these people. Like we're all got similar outlooks on life. We're all positive. Like we're here to do good things. We're not here to be bad. We're here to be good. Like, but we
Yep.
had character. Like we were,
Oh,
we weren't goody two shoes kids. We would go out and do silly things on the grog, and not criminal stuff, but just silly stuff.
yep.
And there was always, yeah, I don't know, that you just build that up, and then that all culminates in graduation. So 6 months in, you go through all this experience together, and then 6 months in, it's almost like we're excited for the next step, but we're a bit sad in that you're not going to be every single day going to work with your mates,
Yep.
like all doing the same thing together all the time, and then coming back at the end of the day. We used to live with each other, for Christ's sake. It was the barracks. It was
Yeah.
so good, and especially I was 24 at the time,
Yep.
and I
And
just
it
remember, like, how good's this? Like these some of the best people I've met in my life, and we're all hanging out together. And to me, it sort of reminded me my second year of university was just fantastic. I lived with a house full of blokes, and it was very similar to that. There was a lot of camaraderie in that crew. So
Yep.
to me, it was like I found my crew again. It was because all that crew had moved on and done different things, and it was really good there. And then when you graduate, you move out and you're sort of upset again because, like, you've upset the apple cart because you're just the new guy, but you're there with, well, there were six of us who went to Catherine,
Yep.
but none of us worked together. So obviously we're the new probies, so we're not going to be working together. We're all farmed out to experienced members. So
Yeah.
there was that commencement again of having to redevelop that camaraderie. So you want to talk about that, mate? Those early days when we first got on the road, about the camaraderie that gets built up there.
Yeah, mate. So it's like Catherine Police Station was pretty unique in that kind of sense. I think, especially down there, because it was I suppose, a smaller of the bigger stations. In a sense, like not like Alice or Darwin or anything like that, but we had a really good crew down there. It was such a good crew, and the senior partners we had, I think we were very fortunate. We got some of the I think, to start out, we got some of the older school, the really
Yeah,
knowledgeable people. We were really fortunate, but they kind of taught us about the camaraderie there, and how they had a big belief. And I know I've mentioned in other ones where your crew would not leave until everybody had finished their work. The
No.
only exception was if somebody had to run off for a family like emergency to pick up a kid or something like that, then that was acceptable. But we used to always stay behind. So if you had a crew that just had a last minute arrest, the whole patrol group would get stuck in and make sure that was all taken care of before anybody went home. And that was
Yeah.
it meant that you worked together. You were a team. There's no one left standing. It's the old, nobody like the army. Nobody will be left behind,
No,
and
and
that's
that's
what
right.
it
Yeah.
was like. And
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, me too, mate. So when we first got out, I remember it took a while. It took not a long time, but it took a while for you to sort of, you're turning up there and you're the new guy and you've got to prove yourself, and that that takes a bit of time, and eventually people go, no, he's all right. Like he's doing his thing, he's still learning, but all of a sudden you'll have a few nights at the club, and then you'll have a laugh together, and then you've got the shared experience of having worked together, but not just that, you've got the shared experience as well as you both do the same job and you've had a beer together. So you've had, you've made friends with others. And then you sort of, you build that team around what you're dealing with, because if you're doing it yourself, it would be massively overwhelming. Like you couldn't do that. I don't know. I've never really liked the idea of single man patrols or single person patrols. So, I mean, for me, it's, I don't know how, especially in the US where they operate in their own vehicle by themselves. To me, that would be not great. Like you really need that. You need that assistance. You need someone on your team when you're dealing with these things.
Yeah,
And I know, obviously, they've got backup, and we have single man patrols, especially in traffic in Australia as well. But yeah, you just there's nothing better than having that, knowing that someone's got your back.
yeah,
Um, and that's where I think when we first hit the road, that's where that was really good. Like that for us, especially in '07, '08. So that's going back a few years now. Like that's, what are we at, 16, 17 years ago.
yeah,
So it's that was really good. The police club bonded that a bit, and then the work, and being in a small town as well, it was important to do that. But the other beauty of a small place is you can increase that camaraderie, not just within emergency services, but you can push it out to the community. So you
yeah,
build camaraderie with the community as well. So things would be in the news, and they're like, "Oh, Damo, I saw your head on the paper the other day. What'd you have there? It's like some mad drug bust. Oh, bloody hell, I don't know how you blokes do it," and all this sort of thing. So there's camaraderie in the community as well, especially in smaller places. So to me, it just comes down to human beings as social animals, and I think you need to find those people who have similar outlooks and all the rest of it. And the reason why it's so important in policing, as we've spoken about, we've covered this in other episodes. It's just it makes you able to get out of bed and do a hard job when you know that
yep,
you've got a team there who are going to help you out and back you up, and you don't have to fight this huge battle yourself. You go through horrendous stuff, but there's always someone else with you. You're never there by yourself.
yeah. That's
Um,
right.
and like as I've touched on, I think I spoke about our worst jobs when I was talking about the only time I never really had that, and I reckon it was probably the loneliest point in my career when I was the coroner's constable in Alice. Because I explained there, you don't work with the other guy much. He's got his jobs, you've got your jobs, and you just fulfill that role depending on who's on shift, really, and on call. And as a result, that's quite lonely. And you're dealing with bad stuff. So that wasn't good. That wasn't healthy. And that's why I think there's very limited. You can only do a certain amount of time in that particular job because there just isn't that camaraderie.
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you there. I was just sitting there thinking, like some of the crews we work with over the years, and really in my career, the majority of crews I worked with were really, really good. They were top notch people, and
Mm.
you get some of those shifts where you've got so many people on, you'd sit there and go, I don't care what humanity can throw at us today. I don't
No.
care because I know I'm doing alongside some of the best people I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could tackle anything because you had the team. Yet and I think that's part of the. I think that's what was better about our mental health back then because
Yeah.
we all carried that load together, and that was, as we've said many a time. That's what the police club was also for. It was about a debrief, and so people can actually understand each other, and the police club was very important in camaraderie and keeping people together and all that sort of thing. Being able
Yeah.
to talk, not so much in work scenes, so to speak.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, moving on from like when you first got off the road and all the rest of it, or even when we moved on from there. So, obviously I went to Tennant Creek in 2012. So I turn up down there and I'm relatively experienced. It's, when I got down there. So straight away I've turned up in a little crew that they're a tight knit team already, but a lot of them were more junior. And it's not a matter of breaking in; it's a matter of just melding yourself into that team and operate. They operated slightly differently to what I was used to, but that was fine. It was
Yep.
just the way that they rolled. But all of a sudden, you build camaraderie with them, and then you've got links back to your mates in Catherine, and you've got you can reach out and go, "Hey, boys, we're chasing this," and they go, "Oh, we got to get in touch with Catherine. We'll get an email to the OIC." It's like, no, don't worry about that. I'll just ring old mate.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you've got that ability to work together, and I'll even add on that to the point where once I'd worked in a few stations and done some cross border things, I used to ring me mate in Mount Isa and go, "Mate, we got this bloke coming across. I can only find this much information on our system. Can you just give
Yep.
me a rundown? I'll flick you an email so it comes back and it's all legit. But I just need, has this guy got any alerts? Has he got this? No, no, mate, he's all good. He's clear. You're good to go. Or, yeah, no, he's got alerts for firearms and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we would work interstate because you build the camaraderie with interstate coppers. So
Yeah.
it was, you sort of, as you develop through your career, you go from your squad to your immediate patrol group to you become. And I remember when I left the police force, I felt that the entire police force was my family. Like they
Yeah.
were all, I knew that many people that it was just, I knew more people in the police force than I didn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it got to the point where you're aware of everyone, especially once you've been in a while and they're up the ranks a bit. You sort of know every sergeant in the whole place.
Yeah.
Give or take a handful, but you sort of it gets to that point where you really feel at home there.
Yeah.
And mate, I think another thing that I think it's important to touch on is that with that camaraderie, um, there's all this pressure, and with internal investigations within police, and I mean, I must add, police, in my opinion, are held to the highest level of account of any bloody workers in the country.
Yep.
There is no, and I can say that with some authority because I've now worked out of the police force for a while, and I can tell you now, a lot more people, especially within the governments around the place,
Yep.
they just do their own thing. They float along, and there's no level of account. Well, I'm sitting there going, "Wow, you're going to do that?" And it's like, "Yeah, well, what's it matter? It's only his." It's like, well, if I did that in the police force, I'd get done for corruption. So anyway,
Yeah.
whatever, do it.
Yep.
So we were held to an extremely high level of account. Towards the end of the career, as we know, we were wearing body worn cameras, so everything you did was right there. And without going on about them, it was that it almost got to the point where if it wasn't caught on body worn camera, so in other words, if it wasn't caught directly in front of you and was heard and seen and all the rest of it by everyone, it didn't happen. So
Yeah.
basically, that has its own issues and all the rest of it. Now, the other thing I have to cover is that police don't always do the right thing. Police are
No.
humans. We've said it 1,000 times before. The vast majority of police misconduct is just mistakes, and then there's fear within the disciplinary process that, oh no, what have I done? I'm going to get in huge trouble for this. And the fact is that, and you know this when you get a bit more senior, you're probably not going to get in a lot of trouble, but you have to own it. If you're going to
Yeah.
own it and admit to it later on, and I'm not, if you're committing criminal offences, then you shouldn't be in the bloody police force,
No,
and
exactly.
other police should be arresting you for that. I'm
Yep.
not talking about high level criminal behaviour. I'm talking about low level misconduct, or more, even more at the lowest end, mistakes.
Yeah.
If you can say, I, acting in good faith, made this mistake, and you own it, and you go, it was done, for this reason, whatever. You might
Yep.
get a smack on the wrist, or you might just go, all right, you've admitted it. You understand there's a learning opportunity. You might need retraining just to satisfy a procedure. But at the highest level, and I'll share a story. I was friends with a fella. I didn't, I knew him well enough. A bloke from Alice Springs. Well, in 2021, I was the OIC of Operation Crown in Darwin, and we get word that a Northern Territory police officer has been arrested for child abuse material or child abuse offences
Yep.
in Alice Springs. And I remember it wasn't long after the Zach Rolfe matter, which was very divisive, as we've spoken about before. And the assistant commissioner came in and spoke to us all. I mean, he was in the area because he's always in the emergency operations centre. So he came in and just spoke to the Crown crew and said, look, this is the, and we said, oh, sir, I'm going to stop you there. You've arrested a pedophile. I don't care that he was a cop. I would have arrested him myself.
Yep.
Um, I've got precisely no time at all for pedophiles. So
No.
that's gone. That just would have been shut and dry. So bang, he's gone. Who do you
Yep.
think carried out the investigation and arrested him and charged him and put him before the court? It was police who did that. It wasn't some external agency that said, oh, one of your guys is a pedophile and you're covering for him. Nobody covered for him. He was
No.
thrown in the slammer. I think he was initially remanded and then got bail by the court,
Yep.
not by the police. He was remanded by the police.
Yep.
So, you know, when it comes to criminals, and look, I'm not saying back through history, and we're still paying the price for things that happened a long time ago. But
Yep.
when police commit offences and other cops go, nah, that's bullshit, that's out of line. Um, I know it doesn't always happen, but I reckon it happens a lot more than it used to. People go, nah, that's not acceptable. You're not getting away with that shit, and that's the end of that.
Yeah. Well,
So there's got to be that balance between the camaraderie, but
yep.
you don't go so far that you cover up for criminal behaviour.
No, no, that's right, mate. And look, we only have to go back just a number of years. Our own commissioner was sentenced and convicted.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I don't know a lot about that, but I know
no,
that, yeah, for those who don't know, John McRoberts was the Commissioner of Police from 2009 until about 2014, I believe.
yeah,
And in 2014, the then Assistant Commissioner of the Northern Territory Police was a fellow called Reece Kershaw. That name might ring a bell for a lot of people because he's now the Commissioner of the AFP.
yep,
Apparently, he was the one who pulled the trigger on that and actually got the Commissioner investigated and ultimately sentenced to 12 months in prison for corruption.
yep.
Um, so, I mean, that, you
And
know, removing everything, people have their own opinions about it, but the fact of the matter is, the assistant commissioner of police in there went, no, this behaviour is not acceptable, reported it through the government, and the commissioner of police went to prison for 12 months.
yep, and it was
So,
also like investigated by major crime. So
yeah, that's right.
it was our own people that put our own commissioner in jail because we did not accept that behaviour.
Yeah, and that's it. So, and I think that sort of ties in nicely in that the camaraderie also builds that culture where we develop a level of behaviour that's accepted,
Yep,
and it can be dealt with at the low, like little tiny things can be dealt with at a very low level by a senior Connie going, mate, don't do that. Like
yeah,
just talk nicely to them. Why do you have to yell and scream at these people? Just calm down. It could be a learning opportunity by a
yep,
nervous copper who sort of thinks they have to be authoritarian. It can be that the camaraderie is such that the culture can be tuned at that low level, where that's not the way we do things.
yeah,
The sergeant at the next level up, the sergeant is responsible for going, right, I'm not happy with that. And it doesn't need to go any higher. Don't do this stuff again. We're fixing this. And I'm not talking about criminal stuff. I'm just talking about things where you might get complaints for where you don't need them. It might be that
yeah,
you just need to communicate differently in the way you work. And
yeah,
then
yeah. That's right.
obviously that goes right through to levels of misconduct that it's a scale, obviously. And then it gets to the ultimate level, which is criminal behavior, which you can't accept. You simply can't accept criminal behavior.
No, that's right. And I
So
think what you've actually named there is the importance of having good senior partners and all that will pick up those minor misdemeanors very quickly and give the officers, whether it's a verbal slap or, on the bum, so to speak, and sit there and go, this is what's accepted, this is what isn't. And,
yeah,
you need to pull your head in. Basically, and the junior officers will conform because they, like anybody, want to fit in. And if they
yeah,
don't, they will. And look, I can tell you there's a lot of police that left the job even early on because they just could not fit in with our level of ethics and work and all that sort of thing. So I think
yeah,
the NT police really, in my time, I can say we did it very well in that high level of treating people and looking after people. And we wouldn't accept terrible behaviour. So,
yeah.
and yeah, that speaks for itself. Just
And a
before
little
you
bit.
go,
Sorry, keep going. You
yeah,
go, mate.
just one thing you mentioned before, and I just wanted to touch on it. It's you spoke about communication, how you called into state and all that sort of thing.
Mm,
It's such an important part. I remember when I was out at Ramangini, and I mean anybody in the police will probably know this because the the police were turning over quite quickly. There was I worked for 6 years in Catherine, and after I was out there for 2 years, there's people that even didn't even know that I existed because of the amount of turnover of new police coming in. And I remember I was coming in for a training one day, and I sent an email to Catherine Station, basically saying, oh, I'm basically Ben Schultz from, I'm the sergeant out at Ramangini. I'm coming into town to do some training. I'll be at the police club. If you want to get in contact with anybody out bush, um, you know, it'd be good to come and meet and greet and all that so we can build that communication and friendship. Because if you need something done, you can call me. You go, oh, Schultzy, can you follow this up? Because the thing about, especially up in the territory, Aboriginals are so transient. They move from town to town to town all the time.
Yeah.
So the more people you know and you can call up in different areas, the better it is. I think when I was out at Ramangini, the amount of calls I got from people in major crime, Catherine, even down in Tennant Creek, for people to do follow ups on people that were in my town that weren't even my jobs. But because I knew them, they would give me a call and go, "Can you go and see if you can locate this person?" Yep, and it's far easier than going through the official process, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, it's just getting the job done with people you know. So, g'day, mate. How you going? You catching anything? What's been going on? Like how they biting. It's a
Yeah,
good catch up conversation. What I think a lot of people who aren't police will be going, well, yeah, that's just normal in life. It's like, yeah, it is, but it's kind of more extreme in environments where there's potential danger. So
yep,
where you're always sort of facing when you've got, and it's not the community's not the opposition, but the crooks are your opposition. So you've always got opposition to what you're doing. It's really good when you're in a place where we're quite often adversarial because you have to be. No,
yep,
you committed this offence, you're getting this, blah, 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 back in your face. No, this is happening. That's what's going to go on. If you don't comply with that, you're going to be arrested. So you have to do unpopular things like I've spoken about before. And that's why it's really good to have the people who you know are there for you and they will back you up when you're doing the right thing. They'll back you up. And that's good to have. It's really
yeah,
important from the bosses that the bosses back up the troops who are doing the right thing. And I think I've mentioned it before where we had a massive week. It was the Catherine Show weekend, I think 2009 or 2008. I can't remember which year, but it was a huge weekend. We're just massive arrests and lots of assaults against police. And on the Monday morning, I think we were on our last night shift, so we're doing that choir practice, having a few beers over at the club on a Monday morning. And the commander at the time came over, said g'day, and walked into the actual clubhouse, and we sort of didn't know what was going on. And when we realised he'd walked back out, he's gone, there's a carton of beer on the fridge for you, fellas. Fantastic weekend. I'm really happy with the results. I'm just making sure, is everyone all right? He was like, bloody hell, how good's that? He's the boss of the entire district. So he was
yeah,
in charge of the police force from the WA border right across, just ducking underneath Darwin, all the way across Arnhem Land to the Queensland border and down basically to just north of Mount Isa and straight across to WA. So he's the boss of an enormous area. He just walked into our police club and bought us a carton of beer at like 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday.
yep,
I was like,
yep.
how good is that? And big slap on the back. Well done. Excellent work. Very hard work. I've been following Promise over the weekend. You guys have been at it all weekend. Well done.
And mate, that goes back to what we talked about: good leadership. It's about supporting the crew when they need it, and basically giving them good feedback. It's just as I think it's important to do that. Good feedback as it is to sit there and go, yeah, you stuffed up a little bit there, but reassure people when they do good work. I think that's very important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't think what we're talking about is exactly reinventing the wheel, Schultzy.
No.
I think I think a lot of what we're saying is common sense, but unfortunately, I think a lot of this is not necessarily done a lot
No.
anymore.
I,
Um, I
I
spoke
think
to.
it changed. Sorry, mate.
Hey,
I
you're
think
right. You go.
I think it changed a bit. Like, I've spoken about before how I came back to Catherine and, people were leaving before, everybody else had done their job and all that sort of thing. And it kind of, it left me with a heavy heart because that teamwork, because it doesn't matter what industry you're working. It can be hospitals, it can be fireys, it can be teachers. It
Mm.
can be, it doesn't matter which industry. I mean, highway patrol or even the scalies and all that sort of thing. If you
Mate,
have a
private
good
enterprise, any job, anywhere.
Exactly. If you have a good team, you can achieve remarkable things,
Yeah.
and it's important. I think it's I don't know, like you see some really good teams, and I know in my lifetime, like even outside of the police, I've worked with some really really good teams, and
Mm.
but it's just so important, especially in police. I think it hits. I think because you, you're going through some really serious shit. Like there's really, really bad stuff you're going to, and you kind of lean on each other. And I was going to mention something up here, and this is you do get very close to people, and there are relationships that are started in the police because of that emotional connection. But sometimes it's not sexual. It's just a good friendship. You're good mates. You can talk about anything together. And I think there's definitely police officers in the past, and I'd definitely be at fault for definitely at fault. you create a connection with something, and you kind of, you don't spend as much time with the person you love, because you have that emotional connection.
Yeah, nothing personal, mate. There'll definitely be nothing sexual between me and you. Just clearing that up.
Mate, I'm very glad to hear it. That's for sure.
It's not nothing personal, mate. You're just not my type. Yeah, no, I hear you, mate. That's 100% correct. And it comes down to that. You spend a bit of time in the job, and you do struggle to relate to other people,
Yeah,
um, and that's something you have to overcome. And I think to gain maturity in the job, you get past that stage. I remember having that stage very strongly at about 2 to maybe 5 years in the job. I felt
yeah,
like the only people I could really relate to were police because, um, you know, I had a fair bit of experience in the police by then, and I wasn't mature enough to be able to look at it from an external view and understand that I needed external friendships and all the rest of it. So, and I
yeah,
remember after that seeking out friends outside the police force and still putting police in the background isn't that doesn't define me. It's not everything I am. I still need friends who aren't cops,
yeah,
And I think Tennant Creek was good for that reason because it is so small. We used to go to the Memo Club was basically the only place I'd go for a beer,
yeah,
um, and everyone was there. All the tradies were there. Your teachers, your hospital staff, everyone's there. And as a result, you form magnificent friendships with people who aren't coppers, and it was good because it just kept you grounded. It made you feel part of a community, not just we're the local cops and it's us versus you. It was nothing like that. It was, I think, yeah, I think the Northern Territory's a good spot in that. I thought, especially in our day, the relationship between the community and the police was really good.
yeah, mate. I actually think Borroloola was a big one.
Yeah,
We had it with the clinic. I mean, my house, I was single and fancy free and all that sort of thing to a certain extent, and I had the safest bloody house in the township, to for anybody to sit there and have a good time, because it was inside the police compound. But every morning I would have a champagne breakfast every Sunday morning, and we'd have like some of the really good workers in the community. We'd have the nurses, the teachers, and
mm.
they also used to come round. Actually, mate, I'm just going to touch on something there. I do believe you did come up, and for anybody that's a Kiwi, you'll probably know Crate Day, and
Oh yeah.
you and I enjoyed a Crate Day with the New Zealanders. Thought they would teach us about Crate Day. Do you remember that?
Oh well, I remember most of it. Yeah, that was what the biggest thing I remember about that day was. I believe you were. So that would have been. I can't remember what year, but I was in my late 30s, and you would have been in your early 40s.
Yeah,
And I'll never forget your mum and dad were there at the time, and I think by sort of dusk, we're starting to get a bit chirpy, and probably some inappropriate language is starting to fly out of the crowd. And there was still a good crowd there. I'll
yeah,
never forget your mum came down the stairs, and I was singing an inappropriate song that I won't repeat here.
yeah.
And she got right in my face and went, "And that's enough of that too." And that was, sorry,
Yeah.
Liz. Yeah, no,
My
but
my
that
mum
was a great day, great
my
day.
my my mum has the ability to put basically shut up a whole lot of coppers all at once, mate, and everybody else. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, no, she was very effective in shutting the crew down that day.
Uh,
She could have been a one woman bloody city safe crew.
oh,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
shut us down.
Mate,
Yeah,
and
no,
just to explain it, what Crate Day is, so people can understand, is you got 12 hours to drink 12 tallies, and you start
yeah.
at midday. And I think you and I had finished our 12 tallies before 6 p.m.
Well, yeah, it doesn't sound hard, but it is. Don't get
Yeah,
me wrong, you get through them, but
yeah,
unless you're a hardened piss wreck, that's quite a lot of booze, and you kind of got to drink consistently. And it's the old death by a thousand cuts. By the end of it, you sort of I don't know. I wouldn't do it now. It would just kill me now. But
yeah.
yeah, back then it was we got into it, and yeah, we're not promoting binge. Well, we probably are promoting binge drinking a little bit, but we we're talking about camaraderie, and that built a lot of camaraderie. That was a bloody good day.
Well,
But I
and
remember we were
that was
joking about that for months.
that was with teachers and nurses as well,
Oh
and
yeah, there was heaps of
and
people there.
that's yeah, and that's what we try and created. So I think it's those smaller towns you can really build that if you got the right amount of people and right sort of people, it can be really important. Like when you get a traffic accident out on the road, and you got people that will just jump in and help, or
Yeah,
say missing person, you'll get teachers, everybody will come out to help, to try and find this person.
yeah,
So
absolutely, absolutely, mate. And that sort of goes back to we've spoken about that sort of thing a few times as well, but um, that's where they go. That's not just the cops. That's Schultzy and Damo, or that's whoever. That geez, do they need help with anything?
yeah,
And that's where if you've built that camaraderie, then you're more you're easy. It's much more easy to assist somebody who you already know.
oh,
You sort of
definitely,
know how they
yeah,
operate. And you feel compelled to help people. Police help a hell of a lot of people they don't know as well. But um, it's human nature that you'll always go out of your way for someone you already know. So it's
yeah,
um, yeah, I think so. I don't know. To just sort of recap a little bit, we sort of talk about how camaraderie builds right from that very first day at the college. Especially if you've come from civilian world, you might have an understanding of camaraderie, some more than others, and you might have inadvertently had camaraderie, especially with school friends or stuff like that. But when you're thrown into something like that, that's such a niche thing, you build that camaraderie from day one, and it's
yeah,
really important. For guys out there in the job now who aren't feeling that camaraderie, it's almost like build it back, find a way to
yeah,
build it. It's so necessary for mental health, just for feeling good about yourself, like just feeling part of a team. It's a really important human factor. You have to be part of a social crew, and especially working those particular those jobs. You look at war veterans; they're brothers for life.
yeah.
So
That's right. Yeah,
they're
yeah.
bonded through that shared experience, and I think that's similar to what police
And
are in a lot of ways.
and you remember the old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. And when you got 10 other mates you share it with, you're only carrying a tenth of that weight.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's it's an important thing. I think, and I've spoken about this before. Before we finish up, mate, I just
Mm,
want to touch on something that just came to mind, and it's about when I told you that time that I thought there was something wrong with me, and when I told you the story, you turned around and said the same thing for me. That
yeah.
sort of to understand that there's other people going through that same shit as well is
Mm.
such a relief because you're not mentally ill. It's just a factor of the job you're in.
No, and all it is it just it teaches you that you're having a human response, an ordinary human response to an extraordinary situation, and you're not alone. And
Yep.
it's almost a shame that a lot of people don't realize that. They think they're going through this and everyone's going to judge them for what they are. And it's like, no. A lot of people, I wish I could go back and shake my teenage self and go up and
Oh.
ask the girl out. She's just as nervous as you. Bloody hell. If you're confident, she'll be confident. It's all
Yeah,
fine. And you're sitting there going, oh, what's going to happen? So she says no. Who cares?
yeah, that's
It's just confidence. And,
right.
that confidence is built by having people who just, confirming that what you're going through is a normal thing and that you're not the only one. And like you say, that shares out that burden. And no, it's really important, mate.
Mate, I just had this vision of a little young Damien Barb going, like, shitting himself about asking a girl
Will you go to the dance with me?
out.
Yeah. Oh, very
Uh,
good. And, mate, I'm just going to throw a little shout out this weekend for those around the Toowoomba region. I'm an old Downlands boy. I went to Downlands College in Toowoomba, finished in
oh, yeah.
1999. And this weekend is the Downlands versus Toowoomba Grammar Day. And it's I watched a video that Downlands put out today, and it was bloody inspirational. I think they've got a bit more tech savvy than 25 years ago. But yeah, just a bit of a shout out to the Downlands first, and good luck. It'll be tomorrow when this is released. It'll be so we're recording this through the week, but obviously Friday afternoon we launch these. So tomorrow Downlands take on Grammar. First 15 kicks off about 2:30, I think, at the Downlands
Oh,
main oval. So yeah, good luck, lads. Give them hell.
yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah,
And
no,
just a little fun fact that I'm just going to toot my horn, mate. It's the 75th anniversary of that particular game. Grammar Day is called the O'Callaghan Cup.
yep.
It's the 75th anniversary of the O'Callaghan Cup, and I played in the first 15 in the 50th anniversary. So
Well
that's
done, mate.
that's me just tooting my horn, mate. I had very little impact on the game. I was a prop forward. I didn't score anything. I didn't do much. I tackled a few people and I put my head in about 1,000 rucks. That's all I
Yeah.
did.
Well, mate, the fact is, well, you've just touched on another thing, and I heard this discussed about the other day before we finish up, and that's to give a shout out to all the people from behind the scenes, like because a lot of people see, the lead detective and all that sort of thing, but it's all those crime scene people working behind the scene, the general duties to make sure the crime scene's not compromised, and all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of unsung heroes that just want to let you know that you're all appreciated. So, mate, you
Bloody
can
oath.
feel appreciated, even though you thought you didn't contribute much to the game. Apart, you weren't a what do you call them, a fancy boy, so to speak.
Well, mate, Fords only exist to make backs look good. That's all it is.
Hey, isn't that why there's police to make foreigners look good?
Well, oh, well, yeah. I mean, a lot of them just look good anyway, the little bastards. But anyway, that's all right. No, look,
Yeah.
very good, mate.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Yeah,
finish it up, mate.
yeah,
Yeah, and we'll see you all next week.
absolutely. All the best.